Why is getting the second meeting oftentimes harder than getting a first meeting?
When you can get 5 first meetings and you can't get a second meeting, I can promise you there's something wrong with the approach.
Is there a secret to make sure your prospect chooses you rather than your competitor?
They're not being affected by what you're doing. You're probably not effective as a salesperson.
What is the one thing you can do to deliver real value to a customer and transform yourself into a trusted advisor?
I'm educating them. I'm helping them with decision enablement. I'm helping them understand the factors that they need to consider.
We'll get to the bottom of all of this and more with best-selling author, sales industry thought leader, and trainer, Anthony Iannarino, on this week's episode of Social Selling 2.0. Welcome to episode number 46, Social Selling 2.0, live show and podcast. It's 2 weeks in a row I've gotten it right.
I was gonna comment on it. I was still holding my breath.
So Brandon, welcome. Carson, welcome. And Carson, you're the president of the Anthony Iannarino fan club, I see. So welcome.
Self-appointed, yes.
And,
so far we have one member.
We're going to be soliciting for members throughout the show today. So give me a call.
So speaking of the fan club, Anthony Iannarino, welcome to the show.
I'm
Awesome.
glad we practiced the phonics to be able to do that, right?
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, let's get started with the important stuff of the Dad Joke Challenge. Carson, do you want to kick us off today?
Sure, I'll do that. So each week I ask ChatGPT to provide a dad joke that will be guaranteed to beat Brandon Lee in the Dad Joke Challenge. And so usually it wins. Today's dad joke. What do you call a manufacturing plant that produces mediocre products? A satisfactory.
Wow.
They're still here. They didn't leave
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, Brandon.
All right, so
Go for it.
I search high and low through my dad joke database and try to find something to compete with Carson. And here's what I came up today. What did the 2 raindrops say to the third one? 2 is company, but 3 is a cloud.
Oh, boy. All right, Anthony.
I'm recovering.
Yeah. Anthony, would you like to be the judge of this?
Anthony's wondering right now why he ever said yes to this podcast.
I'm going with Brandon.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Anthony, would you like to share your joke or?
No, I don't think so.
All right. I want to remind everybody, you may be new to the show. This is a new name, Season 2, Social Selling 2.0. I was going to tell you we've been bouncing between number 1 and 2 now on Apple Podcasts for social selling.
Oh, look at that.
It was number 1 for a little bit, like a couple of hours. I saw it when I was on a couple of days ago, and then it went back. Welcome if you're new to the show. If you would like the podcast, it's Social Selling 2.0 on all the podcast channels as well. And let's get rolling. Anthony, tell everybody a little about the fan club, about yourself, your background, and anything else.
I'm not a why me guy, but I'll do my best. I made my first cold call when I was 15 years old. I joined the family business when I was 18 so I could play hair metal. Moved to Los Angeles, had no interest in being in sales, had a great manager, forced me into outside sales, great mentor, and I won a $50 million deal with my manager's help. That's not like one of Carson's deals. It's like maybe a tenth of one of his deals, but it was a big deal for me. I was 24 years old. My boss got $435,000 commission for that deal. And I ended up in an ambulance being taken to UCLA because I had a grand mal seizure. I had something called an arterial venous malformation, which is a big group of knots of arteries and veins. So right here, 2 surgeries. One, they glued it shut with an epoxy. I'm the 4th person to have that procedure. And then the next day I had an 11-hour surgery where they removed the bruised brain and the AVM. And I didn't find out that they were going to cut a piece of my brain off until they woke me up later. So I found that out. I went back into the family business. I took the company from 3 million to 7.8 million in revenue in 1 year by myself. And then I grew that business, and people started asking, like, how do you do this with so few people? And for me, it was, I noticed that a lot of people were worried about a lot of other things, but the person that I grew up with as a mentor, it was all just about how effective you are. And so I thought my job was to be the most effective salesperson, not the one that has the best process or anything like that. For me, it was just, can you have the conversation? And that's really what I studied from him. He had really good language, very soft language, business acumen. He just had all of the elements. And so that's what I just modeled. And then I taught other people to do the same thing.
You said something there that kind of hit. You said about being more effective. Tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that. Because I think, and you even said the conversation, right? We're a big part on the social selling show about building relationships, healthy connections, actually building trust before we try and sell. But love to hear your definition of that, of effectiveness.
If what you're doing doesn't have an impact on that individual, if they're not being affected by what you're doing, you're probably not effective as a salesperson. So the effectiveness is, we're having this conversation and that person believes that they believe that I'm creating value for them. I'm educating them. I'm helping them with decision enablement. I'm helping them understand the factors that they need to consider. And I generally start with an executive briefing to sort of give people the context that we're having the conversation about. I've done that since 2001. That's the first thing that we do, is we do an executive briefing. We tell people what's going on in the environment and why these challenges are showing up the way that they are. And that is what you do. When you're educating them, you're teaching your client, they think that that's value creation. And I'd like to hear Carson respond to this, because I think that when you're in an environment of uncertainty, which we are, and we will be for maybe 20 to 30 more years before this stuff starts to straighten out, when you're giving them this information, it allows them to have the certainty to continue on in the conversation, and then eventually the certainty to believe that they can make the changes with your help.
I love what you said about the effectiveness piece. And, I go back to the title of the episode, Sales is Broken. You look at some of the changing landscape of the sales environment, and, meeting customers and prospects where they are has never been more paramount than it is right now. Landscape has shifted so dramatically. The customer behavior has shifted. The availability of information has shifted. What they need us for is completely different than it once was. We were arming them with a vast majority of the intel that they were receiving about our products and services and the landscape of these products and services years ago. But that isn't the case anymore. They're able to do a lot of that research. And so, that's why I think it's all the more important that we're personalized. That we are showing up seeking to serve and to add value, that we not only are able to meet short-term needs, but we play the long game, and that we are very strategic when it comes to how we map out the foreseeable future with a client. There's so much that goes into the planning and the delivery, but also the change management. Those are more than ever the top topics that we talk about with our clients.
The first book for me was The Only Sales Guide, which Brandon was nice enough to put on the screen. I addressed business acumen, leading the client, and change management as 3 skills that I noticed that salespeople were not even being suggested. It wasn't even suggested to them that that's what our role has turned into. And I did that in 2016 because I noticed, like, if you don't have the business acumen, it's going to be very, very hard for you to win big deals, for sure. If you don't know how to lead the client, they're going to be lost. I mean, you do it every day. They do it every 7 years or 12 years or whatever the number is. And then this idea about change management, that's a big thing of us. I still think it's being under-enabled. I don't think it's being enabled enough for people.
Well, and it's interesting what I'm hearing you say, right? In this world, it's so hard to get attention, right? Attention is one of the most valuable commodities that there are in sales or business at all. And by being effective and doing the things that you're talking about, we're talking about attracting and getting the attention and retaining that attention. which is gigantic, right? Because as soon as we lose that attention, then it's gone. So I think all of this really ties into that. Brandon, I know there's some good questions in here we want to jump on.
One of the things that I kept thinking about when you were saying that is it comes down to that alignment. It's so crucial for us to align with the buyers and what they're thinking, what they're struggling with, where they're going. And I like how you said that. We got to lead that for them, but we've got to align and lead, or else I think a lot of times buyers want to follow because they're desperate for an answer, a solution, something that's going to solve their pain. If we don't lead well, then they don't know how to follow. There was a question I saw in here that I think is great for you, Anthony, and Michael Phelan has it. Why are discovery meetings down 20% plus, or why are they diving in 2023?
Yeah, I can see that. So I'm certainly happy to answer this because it's one of the things that I care deeply about. The reason that discovery meetings are down is because we've commoditized it. And we've started commoditizing this maybe 30 years ago, where we were taught by marketers and product people that the first thing you need to do is give them a long history lesson of your company's history, because everybody wants to hear about that. I had one client, their company started in 1865, and I'm like, can you move it up like into this century? Like, can we get closer? It's a long time ago. And it's great that they're this stable and they're a giant company and all these things are true, but it doesn't create any value for the client because they can go in 2 clicks, they can be at your website and know all the things that they need to know. So you're wasting their time. So when people have this bad experience of that conversation about the history and then your trophy case, all the logos that you show, only the big logos, right? The ones that are impressive, not the ones that nobody knows. And then you start talking about your product and your service, and then you ask them what kind of problems and pain points they're having, which you should already know because you do it every day. How could you not know it? And I always want to say, Jimmy, is it like your 3rd day on the job? You have to ask the question, like, how many different problems do you solve? You solve very few problems. You know what they are. I think that direct asking, there's a much more artful way to do that by giving them an executive briefing and then saying, show me what's showing up in your world. How's it showing up in your world right now? Because I already know what their problems are. I wouldn't be talking to them. I'm not going to spend time with somebody that doesn't buy what I sell. So I already know these things. What's worse, Michael, is that I have had 5 very large companies that all measure their revenue in multi-billion dollars. And they can get a first meeting with anybody that they want, but they can't get a second meeting. So that's a better problem for us to solve. If you can get the first meeting and you can't get the second meeting, 100% that you are not creating value for that person. So it's an audition. And if you don't get the second meeting, it means you've failed that audition. I see in people's pipelines, they have all these opportunities that have never had a second meeting. That's not an opportunity. You are 100% safe removing all of those. Just take all of them out. I know you're going to feel bad removing them, but they're not coming back because that person already had the audition. They failed it, and now they've moved on to somebody else who can create value for them. It's a contest, and I think a lot of the ways that companies think about it, it's a contest between our company and our solution and the competitor's company and their solution. It's a contest between salespeople and the salesperson who creates the greatest value, that delivers that trust. When they feel like this is the person that I want to work with, I'll say it the way that I have it on my LinkedIn profile. You're never going to win all the clients that you want, but you're going to win all the clients that want you. And that's what you have to start thinking about. Like, Carson works for a great company, but that company isn't carrying the sales conversation. Carson is. And they're buying from Carson because the value that he creates for them. And that gives them the way to have a conversation about his company and what they can do.
I love what you said about the kludgy pipeline too. We call those opportunities exit stage right. I think it's important to really, along the lines with your acting and your audition analogy, Anthony, I think it's spot on, because the reality is, flash it or flush it. Get that out of the pipe because it doesn't belong there. Especially if something festers or twists in the wind for a month or two and we've not gotten that second date, there's no room for it. What do you think are the biggest mistakes that sales teams are making right now, trying to adapt to this changing environment and the fact that sales is broken? What are the mistakes that we're making as sellers?
I mean, this legacy approach, just sticking with that is, I think, the first thing. The other thing is I keep writing about reading. And I've written a post maybe 2 weeks ago that was titled, Do the Damn Reading. Like, you have to do the damn reading. You don't want to do the reading. You don't know anything. And that means that you're not very helpful to other people because you don't know things that you should know to help those people. And then I did another one on reading and research recently because I just think that if you're not going to go research that client, if you're not going to research their industry, if you're not going to do the work to read their whole website and understand as much as you can going into that, and maybe doing some additional research, I think it's hard for you to create value for people. So I think that more of that is what's necessary. They don't come in with a perspective. They don't come in with a data approach where, in my business, I can tell you Gartner will say 72% of buyers are now saying we would like to have a salesperson free buying experience. That's not to flatter us. I mean, they're saying something about how we sell, not what we sell, but how we sell. When you find out that 64% of that same cohort that they looked at already bought what they would call a complex solution without a salesperson. Now, the numbers on buyer's remorse are going up dramatically because they're not spending time with salespeople. And they're not spending time with us because the experience isn't good for them because we don't know anything. So I came out of temporary staffing. I can still tell you all of the numbers because I listen to CNBC and I read. It's evolved, that's right, but that doesn't mean it's not broken when people are still doing it the way that doesn't work. So I think that that's true. When you ask me about staffing, I can tell you right now that there are 5.9 million people not working. I can tell you only 1.7 million of them in the United States out of 335 million people are on unemployment. I can tell you that there are 10 million open jobs in the United States right now. I can tell you that wages are going up by over 4% a month. I can tell you 4 million people are leaving their job every month since June of 2021. I can tell you all those things. I can do the same thing about sales and sales training. If you're a person who doesn't know anything that can help your clients other than buy our stuff from us, it's going to be very, very difficult for you, and it's going to get even more difficult in the future. The bar is being raised. It's continually. It is evolving, but it's evolving away from transactional to consultative.
Yeah, really well said, Anthony. And I think one of the key elements, Val had a really good question in the chat here. Your view on having a business case possibly in every technology sales deck. I want to go to that here in a second. You said something that was super important, and it's doing the reading. I remember your post from a couple weeks ago, and actually in the LinkedIn kind of sales thought leader community, there's a lot of dialogue around this right now. It's like doing the studying, doing the homework. I remember how arrogant I was in my 20s when I was coming up in sales, and I was like, everybody had always ask me, what are you reading? What are the podcasts you're listening to? And I was like, I don't really do any of that. I read a lot of fiction. Now that I've got some experience and some legs under me, I read voraciously, consuming as much as I can, podcasts, sales books, articles, etc. And I think it's really fascinating when you think about what all is out there. We started a segment on our team call, and I see Tara on. Hi, Tara. She made a comment in one of our chats a couple weeks ago, and it was around talking about what are you learning? I had a segment on my team call called What Did You Learn Last Week? And it was more industry and internally focused. But this is more, I changed it on this past week's team call after talking with Tara. And it's, what are you learning in general? Are there outside podcasts? Are there outside materials? We as sales leaders, we owe it to our teams to infuse that culture and that mindset of voracious learning into our teams. And I think that's super important right now. Would love to go to Val's question, because I think this is another area where we as sellers, we've got to up the bar. We are not having that C-level acumen. And I know that this is one of your big pillars. So what are your thoughts here, Anthony?
I think that it's our responsibility, and I'm probably going to say something that a lot of you are already doing, but I don't know that we talk about it enough. When you are somebody that's got a lot of insights and you've got the experience, so I call this one up. That's in the book Elite Sales Strategies. I call this being one up, which means I have more knowledge and experience because I do this every day. Now, when we talk about the client, they're one up in their business. They know more about their business and what needs to happen and how things need to go. When you start giving people the information like what I just rattled off, I can rattle it off on sales, I can rattle it off on a number of other industries that I care about. At some point, you have this relationship where the person in a leadership role just lets go of it. And they're just like, Carson's going to tell me what I need to do. He's going to brief me before something happens because he's always making sure I'm on top of these things. And they now look at you as that trusted advisor. I can give it to Carson because I trust that he's going to make sure that I don't get harmed. He's going to tell me I need to make this change before I need to make it. And you can't do that without having the insights and the experience to tell people, like, this is what's going to happen. It looks like it's magic for you when you can see around the corners because you're doing the reading and they're not doing the reading and they don't want to do the reading. I've asked every CEO I've ever gone to dinner with one question. And normally what I do is I grab their arm a lot harder than they think I should be. And I just ask this one question. How long until people figure out you have no idea what you're doing? And they all say the same thing. I have no idea how I got here. There's no CEO school. I have no idea how half of the things here work. And they will all confess that, not in front of other people, but they do at dinner. And they want somebody to hold some part of this for them so they have somebody that they can trust that will take care of their business with them. And so when you show up as that kind of person, you eventually become a trusted advisor for that person and they just go to you. I never want to sell in a way where I could get an order because I want to sell in a way that I get a client and then I get all the orders for the rest of our lives together. And I think that that's the difference between the way that a lot of people are still selling and the way that they should sell if they want to have much greater success.
Well, I'm sitting here being fanboy, just absorbing all this. I forgot that I was actually on it. We use the terms a lot. We talk about buyer-centric versus seller-centric as a way to try and help people see the difference in what they're communicating, the content that they're sharing. And I think that for me, everything you're saying, I have these bells screaming off of buyer-centric, buyer-centric, buyer-centric. And I love your content around that read. I mean, I've learned so many habits from you and over the years because of that. Knowledge is power. I know it sounds trite, but more and more, what I hear you and Carson both saying over and over again is we've got to be ahead. We've got to have those facts and information. And when we lead, they follow. But if we're sitting there asking them, well, what's problem do you have? I think buyers now, there's such lack of credibility at that point that they just check out. And that's probably the example you said where they get all these first meetings, but they never get the second. Buyers want to be led these days because it's efficient for them. They want their problem solved and let's move forward. And that's for everybody listening. That's kind of the way I summarized in my simple mind what I heard you and Carson just saying. Does that sound right, guys, or did I oversimplify it?
I think it's sense making. Like you're getting all this information from lots of companies you're doing business with. You're learning from them. You're helping them learn what they need to know. And they want somebody to explain, like, why are these things happening? And what should we be doing about these? And what strategies are other people pursuing? What's working and what's not working? And that's what they're looking for, is somebody who knows the things that they don't know, because they can't know everything. And that's what I was saying with the CEO. They can't know everything. Mm-hmm. They're busy. They're doing a lot of work. They're head down. And they really, really like to rely on salespeople who can cover some portion of their responsibilities. Like if you're a marketing expert, they want somebody who knows more about marketing. They want somebody that knows more about sales, more about finance, all of those things. They want somebody they can turn to, not just their own team.
When used properly, social selling can arm us with information and help us build relationships and help us show up adding value. But, as we all know, that's not always the case. Anthony, what are your thoughts on how we can effectively leverage social selling in order to do all the things that you've articulated, create and forge these meaningful dialogues, earn that second meeting, stay at the pulse of our customers?
I think if you have an insight-based approach and your deep insight, I think if you want to help people, what we call it is a deposit in a relationship. So I'm giving you the insights. I'm not asking you to sign up for anything to get the insights. I'm just going to give them to you on LinkedIn. I'm doing it every single day. I'm putting something out with a lot of emojis so I can get some people to at least enjoy part of this, right? So I'm doing that. I don't care about, like, I don't need the deal today or anything like that. I just want to give them something that's valuable. So I think when I get things on LinkedIn that are terrible, I mean, they're just awful. There are people that offer me sales training, for example. Then I have to say something like, would you teach people to research the client first and maybe determine whether or not you think they're really a prospect? And then I'm done talking to them after that. But that's just what's happening there. Mm-hmm. Just take the insights and give them the insights and say, these are some of the things that we're looking at. These are some of the things our clients are worried about. Here's the data. If this is helpful for you, we'll give it to you, and that's it. Like, just give it to them and don't worry about it. These things all come around. And I had somebody on LinkedIn today say, how do you balance this self-orientation with the other orientation? And I had to tell him, like, nobody has said it better than Zig Ziglar. Like, if you can have anything you want, if you help other people get what they want, and there isn't another way. Like, you don't have to be part of this. And I will just tell you, in any business that I have an ownership stake in, we never say our name. We never say the name of our company. It's not on the slides. We do straight insights, straight education, straight just give on this thing. And I still have no one has ever said, like, I don't even know what the name of your company is. It's not that important. Mm-hmm. I don't need to show you the logos. I don't need any of that. I'm only here to serve them and give them what I know to be true and try to help them with it. And that's, for me, the easiest thing to do, is to just take that role and then not worry about it, because it all turns out great when you're a value creator. And if you create value, they're going to like you. If you don't, you're not getting a second meeting.
I love that so much, because it all goes back to the people. We have a very robust partner ecosystem. And what you said earlier about, on the slide, every one of them has their money slide. Here's all the logos. Here's all the stuff. But you know what the differentiator is every time? It's the person. If I can work with that person, if I trust that person, if I'm transparent with that person, if we collaborate and we are both rowing in the same direction, game on. Let's go work together. I think that's the key element that we've got to understand, is in this day and age, we've got to make sure that we are very focused on understanding, like you just said, Anthony, how do we empower and enable that client to win?
Right. That's right. That's what they're looking for.
There's a couple of things I wanted to clarify. We've talked about so much here in the last 20 minutes, but there are a couple of things, Anthony and Carson and Brandon, that really jumped out. Anthony, as you said, right, there's the wrong way to do it, which we all get every day. But the right way, it starts to set the foundation for what you were talking about, that when you're going into a discovery meeting or an early conversation, you're already knowing, you already have developed trust. In some cases, you're already a little bit of a mini celebrity in some cases, right? Depending upon where they saw you. So
if you're Carson, it's true.
Well, Carson.
No, actually, Brandon. I mean, Brandon was in Back to the Future, so he is a celebrity.
Right. Brandon pulls up in a DeLorean in his first call. It's really cool how he does it.
If we stack rank the celebrity on this call, I am a distant fourth.
Oh, my gosh.
But going back to the soul, I think that's a great way to set that foundation, so that those discovery and those early calls, right, those early meetings, we talk about it as we have a healthy connection before we even start doing the meeting. The other thing that you brought up that I think is really, I have a question on, and buyers generally are trying to be more sales free. They're trying to do more things on their own. I know in my world, in our world, we see a lot, though, that's actually in some cases creating more problems for buyers than it is answers, and leading to no decisions, drawn out decisions, lots of confusion. What's your take on that, Anthony? And is there, how do you see that getting solved, or what are some things that can be done to solve that?
I watched a video of a person, they needed to have their ascending aorta replaced. And I watched it from beginning to end. It's a very simple procedure. And I asked a cardiologist about how difficult is this? And they're like, it's one of the easiest things that we do. Now, it's still very risky. And so I could tell you, like, you cut the chest open, you open it up, you clamp it, you cut off the part of the aorta, and you replace it, and you sew them back up. And I know exactly what the order of that goes into, but you don't want me to do that because I have no experience cutting your chest open. And I think that this is how you're like, you can learn anything, you can read everything, but it's not the experience. So Carson would know you need to do this instead of this. Why? Because you're doing this in a different way than your friend who you think you want to do it the way, but it's not right for you because it's not going to work the same way, the way that you're doing things. And that's the kind of stuff that we have this knowledge from helping clients over a long period of time, that we know all these things that they can't possibly know if they don't do the work that we're doing. So the mistake that they're making is thinking that information is the same thing as insight or experience, and it is not experience. And if you don't have the experience, you don't want somebody to do it. When I found out I had to have my brain surgery, I had a call from my aunt who was working for a neurologist, and she said the best person in the world to remove an AVM is Dr. John Tu. I sat down with Dr. John Tu. He didn't have a great bedside manner, but I asked him a question. I said, how many AVMs have you removed? And he said, a little over 3,000. Okay. That's a lot of brain surgeries. And I felt confident with him. He's already confident. And the difference between John Tu and God is that God doesn't think he's John Tu. But you really don't want a nervous neurosurgeon. You want somebody who is confident that they're going to keep you alive. So I think that's, if I could give you that story, that's the difference. If you don't have the experience, you can read anything, but you can't do it. And you don't really know how to make those decisions because you just haven't seen enough of those things.
And a lot of times, just real quick, Carson, is that obviously people are skittish, right? Because they think they're going to get sold or they're going to get a bad experience. And again, going back to social, just to kind of put the bow on that, if you can start to build the relationship on social, have presence on social, be the celebrities like Carson and Brandon are on social, then you're now teed up to actually for them to accept that advice and be willing to, they're not so skittish as they go along.
I was just going to say, the great sellers, they're not going to go anywhere. And I mean, the greatest value that I can bring a client, I've been posting for the last week. I've been kind of on a roll posting about my favorite deals of all time. And like I posted one today about playing the long game, this deal that took me 3 years, 2 of which the customer wouldn't talk to me. But you can't force feed yourself into the dialogue. The greatest value that I bring customers often, I can help navigate resources and demystify the investment. And I can unlock resources that they're entitled to that they likely don't know about. And that is the greatest value that I bring. And we've got to figure that piece out. What is the value that we bring? I can get nearly any conversation I want with a customer executive because of what Anthony said earlier. I show up saying, this is what we're helping all of our customers with that are in the same boat as you. I read your earnings report. I know that this is the situation that you're in. You're merging, you're acquiring. This is what we can bring to bear. Showing up, knowing that they want to talk about one of like our key 4 pillars right now. Those things can get us in a lot of these different meetings. But I'm really intrigued, and Kathy had a great question in the chat about kind of earning that second meeting. Do we talk about product? Do we talk about brand? Do we talk about our company in that first meeting? I know, Anthony, you kind of disassociated ourselves from like, let's not give the history of the world according to our organization in date number 1. What should we be talking about in meeting 1 to get meeting 2?
Meeting 1, I like to deliver the insights and give the context of why they have problems that they have and what the headwinds and tailwinds might look like. Yeah. Mostly it's headwinds. So I like to start there. The second meeting, I would not get into product at all. I'm I'm going to work very hard on discovery to make sure that I can get the root cause. And I use a discovery process that I learned from a guy named Ken Wilber, who created integral theory. So probably don't know Ken's work. He's a very interesting guy. He's the most cited academic in philosophy in the United States. And what he has is four quadrants. So the bottom right quadrant is the external environment. We can measure that because it's real. And then you're going to go up to the top right, and you're going to have data and things that we can actually measure and see. So that's like materialistic, right? We can actually measure these things. And a lot of people are scientific materialists and think that there's only atoms and there's only chemistry, but it's not true. On the other two quadrants, at the top right is somebody's subjective beliefs, their values, their experiences, all of those things. So we're all good at doing this. As salespeople, we know how to elicit those things that are inside that's subjective to them. Now, they might pretend like it's objective, what they say, but other people will have other ideas. And then the bottom quadrant is the culture, and that's the subjective collective in what they believe. If you can get all four of those, if you can get all the data around all those, you can get very quickly to a couple things. One, what is the root cause or root causes? And then two, are people prepared to make the kind of change that we're going to ask them to make? Are we going to be able to get the money? Are we going to be able to get the consensus on these things? And I try to get all of those done in discovery. So I wouldn't get to product or solution for some while. And I will try to push that off as long as I can and try to create more and more value and more value until at some point it's time to move forward. So I'm not in a hurry. I know that there's a lot of people that would say something like, we want velocity. I don't want velocity. I want momentum, but I'm not in a hurry. I'll take my time. If they need more time, I'll give them more time. I don't have a problem with any of that. Winning is better than winning faster. Like just winning. Don't worry about the speed. Just win. If they need 2 more meetings, give them the 2 meetings and win the deal. I mean, that the only thing when I see all these things about we need to be more productive. Well, if you do something and you don't win, that's a 0, right? That's a 0. So there's no production. So win. And that's the thing I'm always most concerned about. How effective can we be so that we have a very high win rate? In my family's staffing company, 4 women work there. That's all for $55 million in revenue annually. Win rates between 85 and 95. Pretty good.
Wow.
And people say, what are you going to do next? I don't have to do anything now. I don't have to do anything. It's all good. We win at a very high rate. And we've done it for a long time. And I think that that's what everybody should be working towards is like, how effective can we be when we're sitting across from the person who's going to make a decision? And I think that that's a really important thing to focus on. We're working on right now a lot of technology. And I don't think technology can do something about effectiveness. I think it can give you some tools, but it's not going to help you in the sales conversation unless Carson goes in and he's like, I want to tell you about our CRM. I want to tell you about what we do with social. And they're going to go like, what are we talking about, Carson? They don't care about any of that thing. They care about what am I learning?
Anthony, I really appreciate it. I want to take a step back on things that we've talked about on the show a lot. And one of the mindsets that we've shared is that go slow to move fast, which is what I just heard you say. Go slow to move fast because you become more effective. You increase your close rate. How are you working with teams that speed, 30-day goals, quarterly goals, that it really is the stressor that's pushing the sales team, and they're not allowed to think the way that you just shared in order to get those high close rates?
I think a lot of companies are now acting like tech companies. So they're putting in SDRs and BDRs, and they're doing Frederick Winslow Taylor. They're like slicing the rolls like it's a conveyor belt, and it's not a conveyor belt. And you don't hand it off for the person to like turn the wrench 2 times this time, and then hand it off to the next person. And I don't think that this serves you. Like I think it might work for some tech companies, but I think that it's hard for SDRs and BDRs. Number one. Number two, when they decide to go become an AE, they're not prepared for it. And so they have a lot of trouble because they weren't part of all the conversations that they should have been part of. And I would want them to be treated like a full cycle salesperson. So I think a lot of this stuff is coming from big companies that have said, we're going to set these things up this way. But I don't think that there's any reason for most companies to do something like that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, comment, please, 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 anyone listening, if you're a traditional company with full cycle AEs and that model, don't bring in the BDR, SDR model. Like, please just don't.
Michael's saying 680,000 BDRs on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm saying a prayer right now.
And here,
I'm praying.
I had, hopefully he won't mind, but I had breakfast this morning with Morgan Ingram. And
great guy.
And for those that know him, like that was his world. He was outreach and BDRs and SDRs, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but he said, when I'm looking up right now, that is dying to dead, and we need to get back, to looking at these traditional AE models with the service first mindset in order to win deals faster, right there. I mean, he said a lot in there, and I was kind of shocked, to be honest, that that's the conversation that we had. I was excited about it, and he's going to come be a guest on our show here pretty soon too. But the question I asked Anthony was, how does sales producers and sales leaders handle that? Like, how do they infuse it? I mean, we've had a lot of people in our community asking us, like, this is the pressure I'm under, and I know it's not going to work by doing this, but I'm being forced to do it. Like, get the deal, get the deal, get the deal. And they know that it's just shooting themselves in the foot. So how do we empower them?
I can't speak to the citation on this, but 89% of salespeople say they're burned out.
Mm-hmm.
This is because of that. If you want a deal in September, you needed to do that work months earlier. And this idea that we can do something in 30 days that takes the client 90 days, it's not going to work. This is desperation for the sales manager, and they're putting the pressure on those people. But the sales conversation is the sales conversation. I wrote this morning about it's not mechanistic. Like, you can't just say, I'm going to run this like it's some sort of a conveyor belt. It's not a conveyor belt. It's a dance. In the dance, sometimes people, if you go fast, like you're going to sprint, the other person's trying to dance, that isn't going to work. Like, you have to go the speed that they can go, and they have a lot of things still to learn. If it takes them 90 days, it takes them 90 days. I wouldn't shorten it. I would just try to make sure I have enough opportunities that I don't have to worry about it. And that is the thing. If they're worried about it, it's you're not doing. I'll tell you what I'm mostly concerned about. You have to do the right thing, and you have to do it in the right way, and you have to do it at the right time. And if you get any one of those 3 variables wrong, you will have problems. So a lot of the times when I see people that are struggling, they didn't do the work that they needed to do to build that opportunity pipeline, and now they want it to go fast. I had one client that told me one time, I was talking to the board, and they said, your pipeline looks great. If you could just close all these in the next 30 days, that would be great. And I said, yeah, why don't you? Just close it. It's easy. Just go out and tell them, like, sign right here. We're going to get moving. The board told us to do that. Like, that doesn't work. It's a nature. There's a nature to the buyer who's trying to figure out how to make these decisions. All I can tell you is that try to go as fast as you can, and then you will not have that opportunity by trying to push them forward without having them the confidence and the certainty that they're going to be able to do what we're asking them to do. It's
There's a valid reason why this pressure exists. I mean, there's a valid reason. A lot of companies are fighting for their survival, their growth. They've made forecasts based on what they were doing pre-pandemic, early days in the pandemic, and then the growth stalled or whatever the case may be. But I think it also falls incumbent upon us as sales leaders to create and nurture a positive culture around this. As a sales leader, I can often take the brunt and I can shield my team from quite a bit of that pressure myself. And I take that very seriously and I take that responsibility seriously. And I think it's also important that we overwhelm the pipeline. Go out and figure out, what am I trying to achieve this year? Do I have the relationships that I need? Go out and diligently create more opportunities, invest in more relationships, and then you're going to have a heck of a lot less pressure in trying to get deals closed, because those will come naturally as part of that relationship.
Yeah, so that's right. So you do the right thing in the right way, but if you don't get the right time, then you have a problem. So I don't think if I had a magic wand that I could just wave one time, 90 minutes of prospecting every single day between 9 and 10:30. Like, just do it. That will give you 7.5 hours of your week, and you will get enough meetings that you will be able to create opportunities. But when you don't do any for weeks or months, and then you go, I'm going to try to catch up, you can't cram. It's not like a college class that you have a term paper for. Like, you can't do it. You have to do all that work when it had to be done, or else you're in deep trouble.
God knows I tried that in college.
I want to just point out a quick comment by Kathy, and we'll wrap up here. And Anthony, I want to have you talk a little bit about your new book that you have coming out. But I think, one of the comment here, right? Tech and SaaS are a big pool of sales pros that most of us need a mental reset. A lot of this BDR thing and all that came from the book Predictable Revenue back in 2011?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was 12 years ago. And the world, that's a long time, especially in the world of technology and buyer and just everything we've been talking about today. So to continue to be investing in something and building on something, that is just really an obsolete model all the way around. And yeah, as you said, I think Anthony said, please don't, or whatever. It's just, to me, it seems like it's a big waste of money, honestly.
We still have people that are using sales approaches from the late 1960s, which, everything has changed since the late 1960s. Like, nothing is the same anymore. And if you don't recognize that buyers are very, very different now, even over the last, say, 5 or 6 years, increasingly different, increasingly more demanding from salespeople. And when they find them, they're going to buy from you. So if you are an insight-based salesperson, you're deep insight, you're doing the reading, you're doing the research, you're going to have an extreme strategic advantage over competitors. If you don't, and you have the same thing to say that everybody has said, and I will tell you my opinion on this is, two salespeople are going to call on the same client. Person A goes in on Tuesday. They go through the legacy approach and start talking about their company and so on. Thursday, the second person comes in, does the same thing in the same order, totally commoditized discovery, having the same conversation they've had hundreds of times. And then you go to the client and you say, what was the difference between salesperson A and salesperson B? And they'll say, salesperson A was taller with lighter hair, and salesperson B had a red logo, and that's all I remember. That will be all they remember, unless you gave them something more meaningful that they could remember and say, I just got done talking to Carson, and he explained to me why we're having some of these problems and what's going on in the environment and why these things are happening. Now they're going to have a different conversation with their team about what they just had a conversation with. And Carson's going to be invited to come back and have a conversation with more people in the room, because he already proved that he's worth talking to. And this is where we are. So when I say sales is broken, I'm saying that there's a lot of things that we're still doing that we shouldn't be doing anymore. And it's causing people to have some of that stress. When you can get 5 first meetings and you can't get a second meeting, there's something wrong with your approach. I can promise you there's something wrong with the approach.
So we could keep going, I think, for at least a couple more hours. I mean, the comments and the things that are coming in are great. It's like there's just a lot of great topics here. We might have to do this again, Anthony, if you're up for it, because it's been awesome in terms of your feedback and some of the knowledge here. But I wanted to make sure before we wrapped up, you have a new book coming out. We were talking a little bit about it before the show. It sounds really interesting, called The Negativity Fast, right? Is that the name? Did I get that right?
You did. And my first non-sales book, so 5 sales books in a row. I've been asking to do this for some period of time, and my publisher is allowing me to write this book. I think that there's a lot of people that have a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. I think post-pandemic, there's been so much change, and one of the things that I study is the rate of change, which is accelerating. And if you look at Ray Kurzweil, sorry, Carson, he's with the other guys, right? But when
There's
you
room
get
for everybody.
Yeah, when you get to the knee of the singularity, where it just goes straight up, what Kurzweil says is that it will rupture human civilization. Like, it's going to change everything even faster than it is right now. Toffler said the rate of change is so fast that we're going to have a massive breakdown because we're not going to be able to keep up with the change. So that's one of the things. But a lot of our negativity is self-produced. We're able to talk ourselves into being negative very easily. So this is a book that's got practical, tactical strategies to be less negative and be more positive. You're allowed to be negative. You are wired that way. There's a thing called negativity bias. We all have it. It's kept us alive. But I'm thrilled to get this book out. It'll come out at the end of October, and I hope a whole bunch of people read it, and I hope they feel better.
You want to share with us that one tip you were sharing with me earlier
Because I
really great.
When I'm talking to people, they ask, like, what's the one thing? They want to know what the one thing is. If there's only one thing, there's not only one thing, by the way, but if there's one thing that can make you feel way better and be a lot happier, a lot more positive, it's gratitude. But if you have a gratitude journal, like I do, you might find it boring. Like, I love my children. Okay, yeah, I know you're grateful for your children. You're grateful for your wife. You're grateful for the things that you have. Okay, at some point, you're going to get bored, and you're going to I have to be grateful for other things. So Marty Seligman, who created positive psychology, at the time where he was in Pennsylvania, everybody was trying to figure out how to help people with drugs and psychoanalysis. And he figured out that you could have a positive type of psychology that would let you flourish. And what he had millions of people do on a website that was promoted in Time magazine is to do something called 3 blessings. So if you want to feel better, if you want to do something that would be good for you, for 2 weeks, you write down 3 good things that happened to you during the day, and why those things happened and what it meant for you. And if you do that for 2 weeks, the research that Seligman shares is that it's more powerful than psychoanalysis, and it's more powerful than pharmaceuticals. So it's just this. It's that powerful that we believe it's even more powerful than any of the other things that you might use to try to feel better. So I want to share this with as many people as I can. I did it with one of my companies. I did it on a chat, and I thought, well, we'll do this for like 2 weeks and see what happens. They're still doing it every day. And then everybody just comments on each other and support each other. I thought it would go away like this fast because you got work to do, but it turns out that people actually like feeling better.
And second tip, just don't watch the news, right? Do that and don't watch the news, and life is good. So.
I have not. My wife is mad at me most days because she'll say, "Did you see the story?" And I'm like, "Nope." I didn't. I do not consume negativity, and certainly not in large doses. So I stay away from it, and it just makes me feel better. So if something bad happens, somebody's going to call me and tell me I have to do something.
Yeah, I want to throw this out, and I'm seeing a few people say they love it. Anthony, I'm going to take that as my personal challenge, and I'm going to do that starting today, actually. And if anybody else in there wants to do it with me, I'll put together a Slack channel. We'll put it in our Social Selling 2.0 community somewhere. I just think that is, relevant for me. I had 2 conversations today that I won't go into, but these people, I'm going to go to them and say, hey, we're going to go do this together, because it's, especially in sales, but the stress, the change, the fear, it's so much for everybody right now that we need something. So everybody that's in, I will,
In 1 minute, I'll just tell you a few other things about gratitude. Reduces your blood pressure, increases your immune system, gets rid of your anxiety, gets rid of depression, all of those things. In the book, everything is cited. So if you want to go and look and read the papers that I read, all of them are at the back of the book, all cited. Every single thing that I claimed, I have a citation for you if you want to go look more into it.
And it's coming out in October, right?
End of October.
End of October. Awesome. All right. Well,
I don't want to leave anybody hanging. And the easiest thing I know how to do right now, and this isn't a shameless promotion, but socialselling20.com is our movement, our community. Tom Carson, with you guys' permission, I'll create another space just for this called gratitude. Everybody give me 30 minutes and let me spin this up in there. And we'll just have a feed in there, and everybody can start adding their 3 gratitudes. So, Anthony, last time, I know we're running over, but can you give the instructions again for all of us?
Yeah. So the first thing that you do is you have to identify 3 good things that happened to you during that day. And then what was it that caused that to happen? So it might be a person, it might be something that just happened. But yeah, if you write those down, you have to do it for 2 weeks. People that did it for 2 weeks felt better after the 2 weeks, and they continued on. There's another story I wasn't able to cite, so it's not in the book. I read it. I thought it was Seligman. It's not. I haven't found it yet. I keep working. There was one thing that I think Seligman was around. He was when this happened. You write a letter to somebody who was incredibly important in your life, and you go sit down with them and you read it to them out loud. And both of you will be crying at the end of it. And you will no longer have any depression if you have any. So that's another one where that goes away, and it seems to stay away. And I'm trying to find that story. I've asked Bard and I've asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is a liar, and it made up a story, and it's like, this is a story about Jane, and I'm like, where is that? Where can you cite it for me? And it's like, well, this is what it might be like. It's like, no, I don't need it to be like that. I want the actual story. So I'm still looking for that one, and hopefully I can find it and maybe share it on the Negativity Fast website.
Did you ask ChatGPT 3, 5, or 4?
4.
Okay. All right.
Still a liar.
Do you want to report that? Do you want to report a bug or a problem there on that?
I'm on it.
Yeah.
I think ChatGPT already heard it and is planning a revenge on Anthony, I think.
It makes up for it in dad jokes.
That's right. That's
There
right.
you go.
I don't know about that. I think it needs to up its game.
Depends on the week.
Well,
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you again. We will look
Thank
forward
you.
to your book. This thing in the new space in the community, Brandon, will be awesome, I think. I think that's a great way. It's certainly needed, right? And it helps us all sort of validate all the good things we're doing every day. And I'm going to write down, we had a great show today. And thanks to everybody who participated, because this was awesome.
Yeah, I talked to Larry Levine earlier in the week, and I told him I think Anthony's going to break your record for most downloaded episode of Social Selling 2.0. So we're going to have Larry back to.
That's right. The competition continues, but
This is our
Larry's-
first episode to go for an hour too. So
Larry's the best.
he's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
so we have, speaking of great episodes, we have Darren McKee next week. So please, we'll get that out for that. And if you want to listen to this replay and hear some of these nuggets again, Social Selling 2.0, the podcast will be out probably Brandon, next 24, 48 hours on all the channels. So go and grab it, subscribe, and more good stuff to come.
And Anthony, I need you to join our campaign to try to get Jeb on our November 1st episode. That is my birthday. You help me?
I can definitely help you with that.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I can definitely help you with that. Jeb
We're
and I are
going to
writing
do some
books
social
together
selling there.
right
We're
now.
gonna
You
do
guys have a book coming out.
We have 2 books coming out together. We're writing 2 books at the same time.
That
It's
is
really
surprising.
odd because
This guy
he's
is
in
a
Africa.
freaking machine. Every time that I start to think, hey, is this coming to sales? Do you think this is going to be prominent in sales? Jeb has a book announced the next day.
Yeah,
Love the guy.
true. He is in Africa, and I was writing. We're doing it in Google Docs, so I was writing, and I saw that his picture was up there, and he was writing something else at the same time, and I'm like, this is really, really productive. Like, I'm doing 1,000 words while he's doing 1,000 words. This book's going to go real fast.
That's awesome.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for all the great
Thanks, everyone.
comments.
Thanks for having me.
Carson, you want to take us home?
Anytime. And thank you so much for the robust chat. I really appreciate all the comments and questions. And until next time, happy social selling.